Today I have fine art portrait photographer and business educator Joy Vertz here with me from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Joy's photography experience starts more than a dozen years ago. From a one-person shop run out of her basement, Joy grew her studio, Shoot the Moon Photography, into one of the premier studios in the region. With 2 locations in Milwaukee, Joy and her staff now handle more than 700 shoots annually and have clients across the nation. Over the years, she discovered a fondness for numbers and strategy. So many of the things that she first thought were up to chance in the photography industry can actually be put on paper and changed using strategy and thoughtful decision making, not just luck. What's more, a little bit of strategic planning can help photographers be more creative and innovative in the long run, not less. Her family, in fact, has accused her of being a numbers nerd, a princess of process, and a warrior of workflow. Joy is now using a combination of her lifelong love of numbers and strategy, the experience gained in growing her studios, plus her stewardship of numerous other creative ventures to help other photographers take their businesses and studios to a higher level. So hi Joy, it's really great to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love coming and talking to other photographers about ways that they can improve their business.
We've got some great stuff to get through in this episode today and see if we can cram it all in. Today's topic is about how you can grow your photo business to the next level, regardless of whether you're new to photography or whether you've been in the business for a while. So, Joy, what is it that gets you up every day and inspires you to do what you do?
I think that a lot of times photographers, have like the sense that we're doing something really, really good for our clients, and we absolutely are. But I also feel like I have an obligation not only to my clients to create beautiful images that they're going to have forever, but I also have an obligation to my family and to my staff to continue my business growing in a really strong and positive manner so that they all have jobs and my, family can continue to, live in our home and things like that. So there's lots of stuff. I love like the emotional aspect of connecting with my clients, but I also really, really love, probably even more so, I love the business aspect of being able to, grow and watch my staff, grow and, watch my family be able to benefit from our hard work.
I can certainly understand that. Growing the business is so important because if we're not growing, then guess what? We're going backwards because everybody else is overtaking us.
It's hard out there. There's lots of competition, probably more so than ever, because the cameras have gotten really easy to use. Everybody has one, and people don't necessarily always know the best stuff to look for. Sometimes it's good enough. An amateurish photo taken, on the side of a building is good enough for somebody, and they don't necessarily need to see why they have to invest in professional portraits. So it's up to us to make sure that we stand out and that we keep excelling in our actual artwork as well as growing our business so that we do stand out and we can, justify what we do and why it's important that they have both.
I'm glad you mentioned that idea that people are seemingly more satisfied these days with the idea of good enough. It's kind of sad, really, that happens, but it's human nature, I suppose. We've got access to all these amazing cameras. Everybody has a camera in their smartphone, and people have become used to the photographs that they get from their smartphones and such as being good.
Exactly.
And I think, as you say, it is up to photographers to make sure that they educate their clients on the value of what it is that they do. And I don't mean the financial value, the cost, whether or not it's worth $200 or $300 or whatever they pay for it, but the sentimental value, the intangible value.
Exactly. And, the other thing, too, is that here we have this generation that is the most photographed generation in history. And most of them don't have any printed photos. I rarely print photos that I take. I take hundreds of photos of my children in a month. And I'm guilty. I don't print them. They live on my phone. And I think that those are the photos that are here for like the present time. But then eventually they get replaced by other photos on my phone and, I don't really look at them as much. I think that's one reason that professional photographers can really stand out is because we have the ability to give them something that is truly an heirloom that they can have for generations. Imagine if you didn't have pictures of your grandparents, from their wedding day and how sad that would be to not have that legacy. And, and here we're doing that for our children. We're not creating it because we're not printing those photos. So I think that is one thing that photographers can really educate our clients about, is the importance of having prints. And I don't think that you only have to do prints. I think that digitals and prints can live hand in hand, and that's fine. But I do feel very strongly that prints should be a part of what you offer.
I think we're all guilty of having loads of photos live on disk drives and never really see the light of day other than on a computer screen.
Exactly.
You started a small photography business and managed to grow that into a prestige studio with 2 locations in Milwaukee. What would you say are the top 3 things that helped to make that happen for you?
The first thing was having a really, really strong business sense, and that I didn't always have one. I think that was something that was learned, but I learned it pretty early on because, out of necessity, I wanted this business to be successful. And I saw myself going down the path of just being a photographer, wanting to take pretty pictures and make everybody look and feel good. And that was great. But I was spending a ton of time doing that, and I wasn't really making the money that I needed to make in order to make it worthwhile. It was then that I had some other life things happen in between there, with my husband switching a job and stuff, where all of a sudden my income was really dependent on. So I had to kind of buckle down and get serious about making it truly a business. And so, that was one thing, was I buried myself in education. I learned tons of stuff, not only from other photographers, but from people outside the industry. I took classes on accounting, and I learned how to, figure out how to price my work. And that was really, really important, because I wasn't making enough money to sustain the bills and the lifestyle and, the time that I was putting into my work. So I think getting your pricing under control is probably the number one thing that you need to do before anything else. I know a lot of photographers say, well, Joy, that's great. I want to get my prices under control, but I need to get some clients in the door first. And I think that's actually the opposite way of how you should think about it. I think that you need to have your pricing under control first before you get those clients, because otherwise you're going to be photographing those clients and you're not going to be making any money because you're not profitable. So I'm a firm believer in making sure that your business is set up from a good profitability standpoint. In fact, I have a free ebook that I will share with you guys. It's free. You can go download it. I think it's like 20 pages, and it'll just kind of help get you started on thinking about pricing. And then the other thing I think that is really key is being consistent. I think a lot of times photographers are very reactive, and they see all of a sudden that their business takes a dip. So they go into this kind of panic reaction mode, and what happens is that they do things not necessarily out of logical business choices, but they will do something out of fear because, they're worried that their business did, take this little dip down, and they, oh my gosh, I've got to get some clients coming in. So then they'll, put up specials or, something that maybe doesn't really go along with their business plan, but they're doing it because they feel like they're trapped and they have to. So I think, thinking long term and having a really good grasp on the big picture so that you're not reactive and instead you're proactive in planning your marketing activities so that you can be consistent.
One of the things that I hear from a lot of the photographers that I talk with is the idea that they get embroiled in emergency marketing.
Yes.
Everything's an emergency. I need money today, or they wake up on a Monday morning and they think, oh my God, I've got to get some clients in today, tomorrow, this week to get some money in. And so they hurriedly throw together a very poorly thought out marketing campaign of some kind, maybe like you say, to do with a special offer or something, and they throw it on Facebook in their Facebook page and then expect to get a hail of people coming in, and nothing happens.
Right, exactly. And it just doesn't work.
Now, your specialty is fine art portraiture. Is that simply just another word for higher end photography, or does that have a deeper meaning for you?
It's really just a way for us to differentiate ourselves from competition. We are looking at doing something that is just a little bit more special. We tend to shoot more studio stuff, and we put a lot of thought into our lighting, and that's something that a lot of photographers don't do. Obviously there's lots of great photographers that have beautiful studios, But we're finding, this trend comes along with natural light photography, which is also beautiful. But being able to do both is one way that we're able to differentiate ourselves. And so by calling it fine art portraiture, we're elevating that in our clients' minds of the expectation that they're going to be looking at this from an art perspective. And we're going to deliver something that is a piece of fine art.
And it makes people think too when they see that phrase or they hear it. It makes them stop and think for a second, well, what does that mean?
Exactly.
It creates a slightly different label in their mind about what it is that you do. It's not a case of, well, you're just another portrait photographer. You create something that's, as you say, elevated above what everybody else is doing or differentiated from what everybody else is doing.
Exactly.
Now, I know that you spend a lot of time helping other photographers to grow their businesses. It's a great, fun thing to do. I love coaching photographers, and I know that you do a lot of that too.
Yep.
What would you say are the most common mistakes that you see new photographers making?
Well, as I mentioned, pricing is probably the biggest mistake that I see photographers making is they don't have any concept of how to price their work. And a lot of times they're just looking at their competition to see what other people in their area are pricing their work at. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it does give you an idea of what the market's going to bear and, what your competition is doing. However, you don't know if your competition is even making any money, and you don't have any concept of what the expenses are and what the time efforts are that go into creating that. So you don't really know if they're even profitable. So I think it's a big mistake for photographers to base their pricing on other photographers because your set of circumstances is completely different. Another mistake that I think photographers make is that when they're doing portfolio building, they actually don't value their own work. And so, as a brand new photographer, you have this sense that you can't charge for your work, and that's simply not true. If you want to offer something that is maybe discounted or complimentary to help build your portfolio, I think that's absolutely fine. But I always recommend that people have their eventual pricing already built up, because then you can give that to the client, and the client has that expectation. So when they're talking to their friends and family and they're saying, what, I had this really great shoot with Joy, she's just starting out, and her prices are here, we got a really special value because she's portfolio building, but the images are beautiful and this is what her pricing is going to be. And that's going to help present us to qualified clients, versus if in that same scenario, if somebody was like, oh yeah, I had a shoot with Joy and she was free and she just gave us all the images, and yeah, she's portfolio building, but she's super cheap. That's setting us up to be super cheap, and it's going to be very hard to get out of that cycle. And then when you're ready to raise your prices, it's going to be almost impossible to do so because all the clients that you've already worked with are not your target market.
Yeah, it's like, if you start giving your work away free from the beginning, it's almost as if you're building your own hurdles for later on.
Exactly. And a lot of it comes, I think, down to confidence. It comes down to having the confidence in your work. And as long as you can correctly expose and, beautifully compose an image and, do all the stuff that is needed technically to create something, then you are ready to have that confidence.
Something else that photographers tell me, they say things like, I'm just crazy busy. I am chained to my computer for what feels like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm up all night editing images. I'm working like there's no tomorrow. And they want to find a way to get back a lot of that time that they feel like that they're not wasting, but they're expending on this stuff. And there's one phrase that we hear a lot of today, which is work smarter, not harder.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean to you, and how can photographers make the best use of that principle in their business?
Well, it's funny because I actually have a whole class that's launching that deals exactly with this same principle. And, I found everybody knows that 80-20 rule, where 80% of your results comes from 20% of your efforts. Just like 80% of your income comes from 20% of your client. And, this is a rule that's been proven many times in, by different studies. And it's absolutely true. I think if you are looking to reclaim some time, you need to focus on the 20% of activities that are really getting you the most bang for your buck. It's exactly the same at our studio. I have 2 studios. I have 8 employees, which is great because I am able to delegate. But we do between 700 and 800 sessions a year, and that's a ton of work. So in order for us to be efficient and me not to be working, all hours of the night, we have to be super efficient, and we really concentrate on those 20% of activities, whether it's marketing, customer service, time management, sales, all those things that make us the biggest impact in our business. So the class that I have is all about that. It's the 10 years of experience I have in this industry and pulling those things that I do in my own business to kind of give it a recharge or a restart. And it's really the most efficient activities that I have for my business.
What about systems? Do you make use of systematized processes to streamline things to make them more efficient?
Absolutely. With having multiple employees, and even when I only had one assistant that was very part-time, it's really important that you take excellent notes and that you have a system in place for being able to manage and delegate all the steps that go with a client. So it's not going to help me, for example, if you have an assistant, if you're constantly having to direct that assistant on what they need to do next. So you need to come up with a process or a workflow for your client management that is going to allow your assistant to have the flexibility to be able to work on the jobs that they are responsible for without you having to kind of babysit them. It's actually gotten to the point now in my business where I actually just did a blog post about this a couple days ago, where I'm able to go away for spring break for 2 weeks. And we've been doing this for 5 years now. The first couple of years, it was the first year I called in like 3 times a day, and finally my studio manager was like, Joy, stop, we've got this. Like, go on vacation. We're all fine here. And then, then I'd call like once a day. Well, then the next year, before I left, she's like, okay, Joy, just check in one time. If we need you, we'll call you. And I checked in one time, and it was like killing me. Now it's to the point where I can leave my business and it runs by itself because my staff knows what to do. And it runs that way because we do have those systems in place.
Going back to that 80-20 rule for a second.
Yeah.
It's been said, of course, that 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your clients.
Yep.
And when new photographers or photographers that have maybe been in the business for, let's say, less than a year, when they hear that, they often say, well, does that mean that I have to fire 80% of my clients? Do I have to get rid of them and just focus on that 20%? What should I do is the question that they ask me about that.
No, I don't think so. But I think that, you're always going to still have those 80% of clients that aren't responsible for your 20% of income. No, the vice versa. But it's important to still, obviously maintain those other relationships as well, because you never know when those relationships are going to flourish into one that is going to be responsible for a bigger chunk of your income. But the point is that when you have that smaller, that 20% of your really elite clients, that you just go maybe a little bit above and beyond and make them feel even a little bit extra special and treat them, in such a way so that they don't ever think to go anywhere else. There's a really great book that I love. It's my favorite business book. It's called Secret Service, and it's by a gentleman named John DeJulius. His whole philosophy is that if you treat people super well, like beyond how they would expect to be treated, they will keep coming back and they will spend any amount of money because they'll feel good about it. And he's in the spa and service industry, but a lot of his ideas will directly translate to what we do. And it's tiny little things that your clients don't really see behind the scenes that really make a big difference. For example, we have like lots of different refreshments and things for our clients that when they come in. And a lot of times, we'll offer it to our clients and they'll be like, no, I'm good. Sometimes they'll take a water or whatever. But one thing we started doing is we have a printed menu. And it has like maybe 10 different bottled or sodas or different things on there. And like a couple different little snacks that we always have, like fruit snacks, some like Milano cookies, just a few little individually packaged things that we can always keep on hand. And then we always make our signature drink is we make root beer floats, and we make them in these like fun color changing cups with our logo on them. The kids think they're a blast. And so we always have the stuff to make all those different things right at our studio. And because we have a printed menu, we hand them the printed menu when they come in, and we just say, which would you like? Almost every single person actually takes us up on our offer to get them a refreshment. And it really sets a different tone when we're working with somebody and they have that little treat, that little, rip your float, because it makes it just a little bit more memorable. And we've had so many people comment on it. The kids come back, they remember it, so that they're coming back year after year after year, and they're like, oh, I get my root beer float. So it's like a little tiny thing. But if they're looking at, getting family portraits done and their kids are like, yay, we get root beer floats, that's a big deal, because it means it's one less little way that they would be thinking of going anywhere else. And they think portraits, they think of us.
What a wonderful idea.
Thank you.
I love that.
And it's so simple.
And it's often the simplest things that make the biggest differences. So finding new clients, this is another big topic that everyone seems to have a hard time with these days. What are your thoughts on the types of things that photographers should be doing to find more of the right people?
I think the biggest thing is making sure that the clients that you're working with, that they're in the right target market. And then when you have a few, give them ways that are easy for them to talk about you. I think a lot of times our people want to talk about us. Our clients like to talk about us, but we need to give them the tools to be able to turn that talking about us into referrals. For example, we use something in our studio called sticky albums. If you go to, I think it's joyvertz.com/sticky album, you can see a little interview that I did with them about that. But what it is it's a way for us to create an app for our clients, like a smartphone or tablet app. And we can put their images in. But you don't have to put just images in. We can actually put in graphics and things too. So if we had some sort of, maybe referral offer or coupon or, some sort of benefit for the new client, we can put that right in there as well. But by giving that to our clients, when they're talking about us, they're not just going to talk about us. They have their phones. They have them all the time. They're going to pull their phone out and they're going to actually show our work. And then because that gives them the capability to be able to contact us right away. There's an interesting story that I had that just kind of hit home that I know that this works, because we had a client, all of our staff there's several of us that sit in like a circle. And my office is just to the side of that, and I tend to not answer the phone. I'm usually my staff does. And so Megan, one of my digital artists, was on the phone booking a client, and I could hear her, going through the whole spiel about everything that we do and everything. And she's like, oh, how'd you hear about us? And she said, oh yeah, Robin, we love Robin. We can't wait to see her again. And just at the time that she was saying that, the phone rang again, and it was somebody else that was calling to book. And this time I picked up the phone and I was talking to them and, going through everything. And I was like, oh, how'd you hear about us? And they're like, oh, you're from Robin. I was like, okay, I just have to ask because we just booked another session from a referral from Robin. It's so unusual. And she's like, oh, no, it's not unusual at all. We're actually sitting here at soccer practice. And she pulled out her smartphone and was showing us all the pictures. And the thing is we made it easy for them to be able to contact us because we had the images right there, we had our phone number right there, we had our website right there, and Robin was right there telling them all about it, being our salesperson. If we hadn't had that tool, they would have had to then go home, maybe try to remember the name. If they didn't remember our name, they would have had to, go back to Robin. And by then that impulse moment might have been gone. So we got 2 bookings in 5 minutes from just one person sitting around and talking. And because we made it easy for them to actually take action, really, really important.
That whole thing removes a lot of the friction in the referral process. Like you say, there's a lot of friction involved in the old ways of doing things, but now with technology and with some of these tools that we have, it's instant. Somebody can bring those things out, show them to somebody, and make it very easy for them to get in touch with you. I love that. I think that's a fantastic thing. So what are your personal 3 favorite marketing channels that you use in your business?
Well, one we already talked about, and that's definitely referrals. That's probably the biggest, referrals and word of mouth are definitely the biggest way that we get new clients every year. We do a lot on social media, and we try to stay fairly current on social media. Facebook, it's kind of a necessary. We do it, but there's also some more creative things that you can do with like Instagram and Snapchat and Twitter and stuff. People are all on different types of social media. I think slightly older people, not older like older, but, moms of teenagers and stuff, they're mostly on Facebook. But teenagers themselves are mostly on Instagram and Snapchat. So it's two completely different markets. And so we need to really be in tune with where our clients are hanging out so that we can make sure that we market to them effectively. And then also the other thing is making sure that my website is trying to be as efficient as it can so that it can get picked up on search engine or search engine rankings. And, staying current on blogging and things like that is really, really important.
The way I look at it is that website, forms the central hub of everything that happens online for your business. And everything else out there has to drive visitors to that place where you make it easy for them to find out, who you are, what it is that you do, why you do it, and why they should hire you, and then make it easy for them to convert themselves into a lead. And I'm sure you're doing a great job of that through that whole process. What about paid advertising on Facebook, for example? How does that fit into the grand scheme of things these days?
Yeah, we absolutely do some. In fact, I have a whole lesson just on exactly how we do it in my recharge class because we do ours a little different than most people. We do very targeted advertising and we do a lot of different segments. So we do different ads that target different groups so that it's very, very personal. So I think it definitely works. I think it doesn't work if you're only just doing boosted posts and the basic stuff. But Facebook is kind of a monster. You have to really keep up on it because it's constantly changing. So it's important that if you're going to use it, that you do a little bit of research and make sure that you're using it most effectively so that you're not wasting your money.
Yeah, and one of the important things about any paid advertising is to make sure that you have a landing page that's dedicated to that particular ad on your website. If that's the aim of the ad, if you have an ad that's intended just to get page likes or something like that, well, that's a bit different. But if you're trying to get leads, then just sending people from an ad to the homepage of your website, for example, is a big mistake that a lot of people fall into, and all they do is just throw their money away because those leads then don't convert into anything usually. So having a dedicated landing page is definitely one of the big tips that I would give to people about advertising, and of course targeting too. Make sure that you're targeting these ads correctly so that you're not wasting money on showing the ads to people in a different country or not in the area that you want to actually attract people from. It can be a minefield, for people who are new to it.
Yeah. Well, and you also want to make sure that you can track the effectiveness of your ads so that, if you spend $100 on a particular campaign, well, how many leads did that give you? How many sessions booked from that so that you can see what your return on your investment is?
So once we've got clients, once we've done all this marketing and we've managed to get bookings and we've done the photography, the next big hurdle, or really I suppose the last hurdle in the race, is selling the finished portraits to the clients. And so many photographers get stuck here. It's a little bit like falling at the last fence in a race. What are they mostly doing wrong in the sales process that you can see?
Well, one thing I think that that a lot of photographers do wrong is that they'll do their in-person sales appointment, and they will go and have their clients narrow down all their images, and then do like a once through and say yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, and then what they'll do is they'll go back and they'll say, okay, so let's narrow down some more. And I think that's a big mistake because you're basically telling your client that you like this image. However, now we have to narrow it down and you have to take out some more that you don't want to, or that you can't buy. And you've already said that they've already told you that they liked it. They gave it a yes. And, and I think sometimes people are narrowing it down because they aren't able to stay in control of the whole sales process. So it's important for you to have the tools and techniques to be able to stay on top of that so that you're in control of that process. And so it's not overwhelming for your clients, yet you are able to effectively, steer them through the products that are going to work for the options and give them all the images that they really, really want.
So many photographers approach the sales process as something terrible. They really don't like it. A lot of them feel as if they are turning themselves into sleazy used car salesmen and that kind of thing. And really, sales done properly is more about helping people to get what they want without pressuring them or manipulating them or tricking them into buying stuff that they don't need or just for the sake of getting a sale. It's very much more of an empathic process than anything else, I feel. Would you agree on that?
Absolutely.
So you have a great program to help people with all of this sales and marketing stuff called Photo Biz Recharge. We talked a little bit about it already in the call today, but can you explain a little more about the course and how it works and how people can get access to it?
Basically, what it is it's a 6-week class, and each week focuses on a different area of your business. So it's marketing, it's sales, it's pricing and money, it's time management, organization, etc. And it's not going to teach you every single thing that you need to know about each of those things, but what it's going to do is give you, anywhere from 2 to 6 tangible, take this and do this right now and implement it ideas that I've used in my own business that work to give you quick results. If anybody's ever heard me speak in the past at, different organizations, I like to be able to give actionable items. So I want to be able to give you guys ideas that you'll be able to implement quickly and start seeing, results right away.
Excellent. Sounds like a really good resource. I'm sure there's going to be a lot in there. So this class is delivered by video?
It's delivered 3 different ways, and you can pick the way that works best for you. So I've recorded them all as videos, but then I've also stripped out the audios, and I'm providing typed transcripts. So if you prefer to watch, you can watch it. If you prefer to listen to it, like while you're driving, you can listen. And then you can also download the transcripts. And I like to do that, no matter which way I listen or watch, because then I can take notes on the transcripts. And if I need to go back, I've got all that information handy and printed. And then there's also going to be access to all of the different templates, scripts, anything that would be needed to support the activity. So for example, one of the things that we talk about is exactly how I do my referral plan from start to finish, all the mistakes that people mostly make, what's worked for me and what hasn't. And then I give you all the templates that you need. So all you have to do is flip in your colors and your logo and print them, and then you'll be ready to implement it in afternoon.
What if people have questions as they go? How can they get those questions answered?
That is a great question. There's 2 ways. So I have a private Facebook group just for people that are in the class, and that is something that they will have access to forever. So as we run the class, multiple times, there'll be more people coming in, which is kind of fun because you get fresh new ideas as well. And then there's also a Q&A portion. So you can submit questions, and every single week I'll do a podcast answering every question that's been submitted. So you'll have access to me in the Facebook group and then also through these, through the Q&A form. And because everything's recorded, even though the class runs for 6 weeks, you'll have access to that information forever. So if it takes you 6 weeks to get through it, that's great. If it takes you 6 months, that's fine. You'll have access to all the information to be able to log in and learn whenever is convenient for you.
I've done several courses myself with other people that have been in this type of format, and it's a great way to learn.
Yeah, I agree. Just because then you can slow things down, you can, go back and re-listen and re-watch things that maybe you need a little extra help on, and just sometimes I think going back, you forget some of the ideas that you've learned and you're like, oh yeah, things are a little slow right now. What can I do? Okay, well, let's go back to that marketing module. And there's a bonus module on even like how to improve your cash flow fast. So it's like if you're all of a sudden seeing that you have bills coming in and not a lot of money, what are some things you can do to bring in some extra cash quick? And what mistakes you can potentially avoid. There's lots and lots of information in this class. It's a really great one.
And the Facebook group particularly is very valuable. This is something that I think a lot of people really don't get the value of it right away. But the classes that I've taken with other people where they've had a private Facebook group has been invaluable. And I offer that to my members for my Prime Focus program, for example, and for other things that I do. We have private Facebook groups just for that. And one of the really good things about those is that the photographers can feel like it's okay to share their own sort of ideas and strategies without having it out there in the public public domain, as it were. And it keeps things nice and tidy and self-contained, and everybody gets to network. I think that those groups are really, really useful.
I agree.
Fantastic. Well, this has been really great, Joy. I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk with me and being so generous with your knowledge and expertise. And I know that folks listening to this will get a great deal out of that Photo Biz Recharge class that you've got going on there.
I would love to have everyone in.
Well, I'll be making sure that they'll have access to the link for where they can sign up, and other stuff that we've talked about in here. I'll put those in the show notes as well on the podcast page. Maybe we'll get you back on here again at some point and we'll go into some of these things in a little bit more detail.
Sounds great.
Fantastic. You have a great day.
Thank you.